The Debate of Love and Death. This is the canto in Savitri, which is the most meaningful in the whole book, the most powerful, where Savitri meets with the Lord of Death and they discuss life and what is to happen and what is going on in this manifestation. And I was thinking how to call this article. And first thing came to me was what the Lord of Death did not know. And it is quite interesting. He neglected something or did not want to see the truth in what Savitri was telling him. He was avoiding that and he was trying not to follow it. As if he didn't know that it was true, as if he didn't know the very purpose of this manifestation. So the Lord of Death appears in Savitri as a wise and powerful ruler. He's also a very great sophist and philosopher. His arguments are very convincing for any human being. He knows himself as a supreme power and does not permit anyone to claim the state of immortality here in manifestation, for only the Supreme has that privilege. None here who is not him, the Supreme, can claim his status, unless of course he himself is a Supreme. But the Lord of Death could not even imagine that creatures born in time and space could become the Supreme, equal to him in consciousness and power. So, lacking that higher vision of the evolution of consciousness, he, the Lord of Death, knows only one thing, that none can be true here but the Supreme. And he is totally right. In this way, he works for the evolution of consciousness in manifestation, where everyone gradually grows into the divine being. So let us start from the very beginning, and I will take some myths from Shatapatha Brahmana and Upanishads. So Brihadaranyaka Upanishad depicts the myth of creation in this way. At the beginning was the Self, Atman, and he was alone. He looked around and did not find anyone but himself. He said, I am. But there was no other name to say, for he was alone. He became afraid. Therefore, alone is always afraid. But then he thought, whom am I afraid of if I alone am? And fear vanished. It is true, fear comes always from another. But he was not happy. Savainaiva reme. He wanted another. Sadvitiya maichat. There is an interesting explanation given by the mother to a sadhak asking why the Supreme, who is perfect, needed such imperfect manifestation. She says that the Supreme already possesses himself in his supreme identity, but actually what he wanted was to experience himself in unity, to discover himself in detail, and that was the cause of the creation. Interestingly, we read in the book of Fate, in Savitri, how the soul, our soul, decided to come down into this darkness. The soul attracted, leaned to the abyss. It strained towards some otherness of self. It tired of its unchanging happiness. It turned away from immortality. According to the story of creation told by the mother to the children of the ashram, at the beginning the supreme Shakti, knowledge force, or consciousness power, Chit-Shakti, created four great emanations of consciousness and light, bliss, truth, and life. When these great beings started their work, they considered themselves to be self-sufficient and got separated from the Supreme and gradually fell and turned into their opposites. Light of consciousness turned into darkness, bliss into suffering, truth into falsehood, and life into death. So, in order to redeem and bring these emanations back to their self-awareness, the secondary emanations were created that plunged into the abyss of the inconscient. These emanations were even greater in power and knowledge, for they had to bring the fallen ones back to their origin. So these two involutions, the fall of the first emanations and the plunge of the second ones, created a double process of evolution. This terrestrial evolutionary working of nature, from matter to mind and beyond it, has a double process, says Aurobindo in the Life Divine. There is an outward visible process of physical evolution, with birth as its machinery, for each evolved form of body housing its own evolved power of consciousness is maintained and kept in continuity by heredity. And there is at the same time an invisible process of soul evolution with rebirth into ascending grades of form and consciousness as its machinery. So the first has become an environment for the second to grow from within, as it were, enduring the resistance of its darkened instrumentation and illumining it by its growth. So it seems that the Lord of Death was unaware of the evolution of consciousness, or rather of its aim. Since the soul's descent belongs to the second stage of creation and has its own purpose of redemption of the first fallen emanations, including death, he seems not to know about this plan. The first emanations were given the task to create the worlds, and they continue to do so the way they always did. So, to turn the eternal life to its opposite, death, the certain process must have taken place, and where the darkening of the Supreme Consciousness occurs first, without which there could be no further fall. For how the Supreme, who alone is, can stop being the Supreme, can stop being aware of who he is? So he gradually forgets himself as a Supreme, and thus creates a duality within himself. On the one hand, he knows himself as such, in the transcendental realm, as Satchitananda, and on the other hand, he doesn't know that it is him in manifestation. In the enigma of the darkened vasts, in the passion and self-loss of the infinite, a contradiction founds the base of life. The eternal, the divine reality has faced itself with its own contraries. Being became the void, and conscious force, nescience awoke of a blind energy, and ecstasy took the figure of world pain. So once the Supreme is unaware of himself, the suffering within his blissful being is the next result. The fall of these two great beings creates a ground for the truth to turn into falsehood, which triggers finally the supreme denial of life, death. Now the Supreme can start from zero. The falsehood in this scheme plays a key role for the perception of otherness of self. It separates knowledge and power, makes power inadequate with consciousness. Without it, the fall of life would be impossible. So when the Lord of Death realizes that he is dealing with the Supreme Mother and not a human being, Savitri, he decides to give her a final battle and calls for these four Asuras as his great powers. He calls to them in the same order. He called to night, the darkness, yeah? But she fell shuddering back. He called to hell, which is suffering, but sullenly it retired. He called to the inconscient for support, which is falsehood, from which he was born, his vast sustaining self. It drew him back towards boundless vacancy, as if by himself to swallow up himself. He called to his strength, which is death himself, his blind energy, the blind energy of the Supreme. His body was eaten up, his spirit devoured. At last he knew defeat inevitable and left crumbling the shape that he had worn, abandoning hope to make man's soul his prey, and forced to be mortal the immortal spirit. The Lord of Death speaks to Savitri. The Lord of Death speaks to Savitri in these words. Who then art thou hiding in a human guise? Thy voice carries the sound of infinity. Knowledge is with thee. Truth speaks through thy words. The light of things beyond shines in thy eyes. But where is thy strength to conquer time and death? Hast thou God's force to build heaven's values here? For truth and knowledge are an idle gleam, if knowledge brings not power to change the world, if might comes not to give the truth her right. A blind force, not truth, has made this ignorant world. A blind force, not truth, orders the lives of men. The power, not light, the great gods rule the world. Power is the arm of God, the seal of fate. Death is to ensure the existence of Absolute alone, and none else can settle down in this manifestation. I have created all I devour. I am death, and the dark, terrible mother of life. I am Kali, black and naked in the world. I am Maya, and the universe is my cheat. I lay waste human happiness with my breath. I slay the will to live, the joy to be, that all may pass back into nothingness, and only abide the eternal and absolute, for only the blank eternal can be true. It has many insights. For instance, nothing can claim its separate birth unless and until it is the Supreme itself. This provides a dynamic basis for perfect future manifestation in time and space. The manifestation is to be also supreme, and nothing less than that. Otherwise, the Lord of Death will destroy it in order to find better solutions. In this way, it becomes the very engine of evolution. Every form which is not perfect is destined to perish, giving a way for a more perfect form, coming closer and closer to the manifestation of the Supreme. So the function of death ends there where the eternal life is effectuated in the immortal matter. The Lord of Death is identifying himself with the Creator of this world. I am the shapeless, formidable vast. I am the emptiness that man calls space. I am a timeless nothingness carrying all. I am the illimitable, the mute, alone. I, Death, am He. There is no other God. All from my depths are born. They live by death. All to my depths return and are no more. I have made a world by my inconscient force. So on the one hand, the Lord of Death has made the world by his inconscient force without knowledge. And on the other hand, he knows that the only blank eternity is true, which wasn't ever made. He doesn't believe in this world as true, for he knows that the Supreme alone is. And because he himself has made all in this world by the inconscient force of the Supreme, and since he created it, he has full right over it, as he thinks. Therefore, in the canto of the adoration of the Divine Mother, Aurobindo is contrasting these two realizations of the Divine, negative and positive, beyond manifestation and within manifestation. First, Ashwapati realizes the Divine Presence beyond manifestation. It is described in these words: a stillness, absolute, incommunicable, meets the sheer self-discovery of the soul. A wall of stillness shuts it from the world. A gulf of stillness swallows up the sense and makes unreal all that mind has known. All that the laboring senses still would weave, prolonging an imaged unreality. Self's vast spiritual silence occupies space. Only the inconceivable is left. Only the nameless, without space and time, abolished in the burdening need of life. Thought falls from us. We cease from joy and grief. The ego is dead. We are freed from being and care. We have done with birth and death, and work and fate. And then he hears the voice of the Supreme. O soul, it is too early to rejoice. Thou hast reached the boundless silence of the self. Thou hast leaped into a glad divine abyss. But where hast thou thrown self's mission and self's power? On what dead bank on the Eternal's road? One was within thee who was self and world. What hast thou done for his purpose in the stars? Escape brings not the victory and the crown. Something thou camest to do from the unknown. But nothing is finished, and the world goes on, because only half God's cosmic work is done. Only the everlasting No has neared, and stared into thy eyes, and killed thy heart. But where is the lover's everlasting Yes? And these are the lines which define the difference between negative and positive manifestations of the divine. Can we at all say yes to everything in this manifestation as if it was totally manifested divine? Not yet. We can realize the truth only in negative terms. Neti neti of the Upanishad. We must deny everything here which is not the divine in order to find it beyond. But where is that everlasting Yes? And immortality in the secret heart, the voice that chants to the creator fire, the symboled Om, the great ascending word, the bridge between the rapture and the calm, the passion and the beauty of the bride, the chamber where the glorious enemies kiss, the smile that saves, the golden peak of things. This too is truth at the mystic fount of life. And the voice continues, pointing to the absolute realization of the divine, culminating in the manifestation of the body of the king, and that none has yet realized this evolutionary aim. A black veil has been lifted. We have seen the mighty shadow of the omniscient Lord. But who has lifted up the veil of light? And who has seen the body of the King? The mystery of God's birth and acts remains, leaving unbroken the last chapter sealed. Unsolved the riddle of the unfinished play. The cosmic player laughs within his mask, and still the last inviolate secret hides behind the human glory of a form, behind the gold eidolon of a name. What death seems not to know is that these very ripples he is creating and destroying are the evolving and growing supreme from within the darkness towards his own and newly rediscovered identity through unity. And that he, the Lord of Death, is not actually an ultimate creator, but a helper to accomplish something which is beyond his knowledge and purpose. He seems to be unaware of the original intent of the Supreme to create another himself, to become an individual Supreme, to be many. All these references which we mentioned, Sadviti Yamaichat, he wanted the second, or Bahusyam in the Taittiriya Upanishad, may I be many. He takes it only as a play, lila, of the Supreme, to amuse himself with himself in time and space. The whole creation in this view is like a playground full of toys for the child God. He cannot take them seriously as something closely related to the Supreme. He knows that their nature is of darkness and is of no match to the Supreme. These are the lines from Savitri. Who art thou who claimst thy crown of separate birth, the illusion of thy soul's reality, the personal godhead of an ignorant globe, in the animal body of imperfect man? Who art thou? Hope not to be happy in a world of pain, and dream not, listening to the unspoken word and dazzled by the inexpressible ray, transcending the mute superconscious realm, to give a body to the unknowable. Or, for a sanction to thy heart's delight, to burden with bliss the silent, still Supreme, profaning its bare and formless sanctity, or call into thy chamber the divine, and sit with God, tasting a human joy. Hope not. This is his formula. Here he is clearly neglecting the growing divine within the heart of man, the psychic being, mentioning that the transcendent self should not be burdened with the bliss of the heart's delight. The Supreme should not be loved, and therefore bothered by the growing psychic being within the heart of man, calling him into its chamber to be and to enjoy together here in the body the human life, tasting the human joy. It seems that this kind of adventure is not attracting the Lord of Death. He seems not to understand it in the positive terms, but only in a negative way, or at the most as the temporary event, with no reason to be or purpose to become. All from my depths are born. They live by death. All to my depths return, and are no more. But Savitri argues in the evolutionary terms. O death, thou look'st on an unfinished world assailed by thee, and of its road unsure, peopled by imperfect minds and ignorant lives, and sayest, God is not, and all is vain. How shall the child already be the man? Because he is infant, shall he never grow? Because he is ignorant, shall he never learn? And here we have the fundamental difference between the negative and positive view on the divine in its manifestation. Savitri speaks to death. O death, thou speakest truth, but truth that slays. I answer to thee with the truth that saves. Thank you.